Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all my Paleozoic Frogs Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile for October 2020. I've been getting a lot of requests to do a Paleozoic deck. What differs from this deck and the Frog deck is that there is a heavy focus on a trap lineup with also the output that you can do with all the different Paleozoic trap cards being able to be special summoned onto the field as level 2 Aqua monsters and then use those to power up the Frog engine itself and then have just all this back row to combat your opponent when being able to, dwindle down their resources and then summon out the different Xyzs and extra deck monsters we use using the traps along with the Frog engine we run in the deck. It definitely is an interesting deck that focuses on, back row setup. So if you prefer those type of control decks, this will definitely be the type of deck for you. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the monsters, as I said before, we are running the Frog engine as well, just for a little more assistance with monsters. So I run 3 Swap Frog, being one of the easiest frogs to summon out, just being the discard 1 water monster, special summon this card from your hand, and being able to send other frogs for setup in your graveyard to summon out means it's a very, very important monster to go off of for those special summons. So you definitely want 3, so you always see this card as well for your setup to go for. The next monster, which I was going back and forth between 2 and 3 Dupe Frog, decided on 2 for now, but if you wanted to put in a third one, you can take out one of the other water attribute monsters, which we'll get to in just a second. But this one also, with it counting as Death Frog, not really a relevant effect, but with it more being when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add 1 frog monster except Dupe Frog from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So recycle power for your other frogs is always a good option, and the fact that your opponent cannot select another monster or an attack target except for this one. With the last of the Frog engine being Ronin Totem. If it cannot be used as a synchro material, but there are no synchros in this deck. With this card, its name becomes Death Frog while on the field. If this card's in your graveyard, you can banish a frog to special summon it. So if you have 2 Ronin Totem and your 2 frogs set up in the graveyard, being able to banish 1 for 1 Ronin Totem on the field, and then the other one for the second one goes right then and there for your Xyz play, which most of the time will be totally awesome as well. If you wanted the third copy of the Dupe Frog to be used in the deck, you can drop down the number of Barrier Statue of the Torrent that we run in the deck. This is just a great control card with all the back row that we have in this deck. You can just normal summon this card, set up the back row, and then just go off of that for the fact that your opponent will be able to special summon any other monsters aside from water monsters. And you can, just keep the back row going until you get your frog set up as well on the field, or your Paleozoic monsters special summoned also. But like I said, you can drop down the number of this for a third copy of Dupe Frog if you wish. Just running 2 of this is still great for the control, being able to also have this card be your discard cost for Swap Frog if need be to special summon this card out onto the field. And that is it for the monsters. We're going to switch things around for this deck profile and go straight to the traps. We do have a few spells that we run, but the majority of the rest of the deck are trap cards. So we'll go with the spells at the end of the lineup and focus more on the more important part, being the trap cards. So we're running 3 for the Paleozoic lineup. Paleozoic Dinomischus. You can target 1 face-up card on the field, discard 1 card. If you do, banish it. And once per turn, when a trap is activated while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card as a normal monster. And this card is not treated as a trap. Summon this way. This card is unaffected by monster effects. Also, banish it when it leaves the field. So this is going to be your go-to setup for a bunch of your different special summons in the deck, making so you get a level 2 monster on the field. Even if you just have the 1 other frog monster, you can overlay the 2 into your go-to monster, or even just have them for other extra deck monsters, including link summons, depending on what you want to summon out. But Dinomischus is great for that banish power, being able to discard other frogs to the graveyard to set up Ronin Totem as well is a very important part of its play style. Some of the other Paleozoics include 3 Paleozoic Marissa. With this one, you send 1 trap card from your deck to the graveyard once per chain, having the same special summon option with this card. So being able to set up other Paleozoics in the graveyard with this one means you have more monster options when you activate other traps on the field. So 3 of this is just good for the setup, the deck thinning if there's 1 specific Paleozoic that you may not need. One of them being Paleozoic Canadia. With this one, I only had the 2, but I am subbing in 1 Paleozoic Pikaia. For that spot, you target one face-up monster your opponent controls and change it to face-down defense position. So great, especially the biggest weakness of this card being that you can't use it on link monsters, obviously, but just take care of the monsters before your opponent summons them out, and you won't have any problem there. Just more and more easy special summons, even if you know your opponent has the link monster and you don't have this card for the setup to go for. You can always just send it to the graveyard with Marissa and make it one of the special summon options onto the field also. And then lastly, for the Paleozoic traps, I run the 3 Paleozoic Olenoides. With this one, you target one spell or trap on the field and destroy it, and then having the same special summon option as the other 3 different Paleozoic monsters we went through. Having this huge of a lineup just means consistency when you set up your back row, being able to basically set monsters, set up your cards, banish, and then also destroy their spell and trap lineup, all by having these set up on the field, but then also being able to rely on them in your graveyard when it comes time to activate more traps on the field. And then for more of the actual trap setup in the deck, I run 3 Trap Trick, a very, very important card in the deck. You banish one normal trap from your deck except for Trap Trick and set one card with the same name directly from your deck. Also, it cannot be activated this turn. You can only activate one trap card for the rest of this turn after this card resolves, and you can only activate one Trap Trick per turn. This is great for all of the normal traps we're running in this deck, being the Paleozoics for your setup to go for. Being able to banish the fact that we're running play sets of everything, very vital in the deck as well. It means you just have other resources to go for and easier setup. So this is basically thinning out the deck for more important cards that you may want to see later on in the game. For more power, we have Destruction, Banish, but just being able to return some extra deck monsters from the field back to your opponent's hand is great as well. So we're running 3 Compulsory Evacuation Device. Just having this back row set up as well as another target for Trap Trick makes it a great card to rely on, because you should always have at least some traps ready to go and set up in this deck. So the bounce power with Compulsory Evacuation Device is definitely a 3, because then as long as you have the numbers to go for, you can keep returning extra deck monsters your opponent controls. That would be either beneficial in the graveyard or on the field back to their extra deck. For some of the non-normal traps that we run in the deck, more for back row protection setup, I run 2 Gozen Match. Each player can only control 1 attribute of a monster, so we only run the water monsters with this deck, so this card will more than likely just hurt our opponent more than ourselves, depending on some of the other extra decks we may want to target to use, but the majority of our extra deck are water monsters, so remember that. So 2 Gozen Match is a big help for sure, just being able to lock down our opponent. Since we only run 2 spells in the deck, I also have the 1 Imperial Order. The only thing, that this will cut down on your life points, but you should hopefully be able to defeat your opponent before then, whether you limit their monsters and then the fact that they can't activate spells, and you take care of the rest of their playstyle resources with your trap cards, is the true power of this lockdown deck. And for more of the basic counter trap setup, because your opponent may try to destroy all your back row, and you may have a few pops or cards that can stop them. Other than that, you still need to protect your back row and stop some of your other opponent's plays that maybe your back row won't be able to handle, and that's where Solemn Judgment comes in handy. I run 3 Solemn Judgment, just being able to pay your life points. The only thing, it would cut in with the Imperial Order, so remember that with your setup. But this card being a great counter trap just for half your life to stop a lot of your opponent's plays. And the same goes for the 3 Solemn Strike and the 1 Solemn Warning. Having this much back row especially will make it so as long as you have your setup ready to go, your opponent won't really be able to touch you much on the plays that you may try to get out against them as well. I like the 1 Solemn Warning. It's just a preference. If you have Infinite Impermanence, you can also try mixing around some of the numbers, maybe taking out 1 Strike, the Warning, and 1 Judgment for 3 Impermanence copies also, because the Impermanences will also work with the Trap Trick, but player preference, I know it's also a much more difficult card to get than the Solemn lineup for some players. And then lastly, for the spell lineup, I have the 1 Harpy Feather Duster and the 1 Call by the Grave. Just, optional spell option lineups for the deck. If you didn't want to run these, you can even take out the 1 Solemn Warning and these 2 spots for the Infinite Impermanence, and then fully focus on a monster and trap card lineup for the main deck altogether. But once again, player preference with what they may want to do for the lineup in the deck using these spells. It's just great for some more back row clearing, and the fact that this is a quick play spell that you can use on your opponent's turn as well with that setup. They come in handy also if your opponent does side in Royal Decree against you, because that would lock down everything in the deck aside from your frog and other water monsters, and then you just have to rely on that to hopefully get around your opponent's Royal Decree. But if that's not the case, relying on Harpy's Feather Duster to destroy those cards is a nice tech in the deck, so you never have that situation pop up. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. I know Totally Awesome is now at 2. Sadly, I still only have the 1. Looking for a second copy. But you definitely would want to run 2 for the fact that it's just that easy to summon out multiple copies in this deck, and the fact that we're not limited with the extra monster zone and just the overall play style of the deck. You can go straight for your Exceed summons and just have the link monsters be an extra bonus for the deck. So 2 Totally Awesome for the consistency, stopping more of your opponent's card effects, having the Solemn Brigade, and just more of the lockdown with this deck, and having Totally Awesome and all the other different frogs we run on the deck as that shutdown for your opponent. For some of the other Paleozoic cards, I am running 3 Paleozoic Anomalocaris. With this one, you need 3 or more level 2 monsters. This card's unaffected by other monster effects. Once per turn, if a trap card is sent from your spell trap card zone to the graveyard, except during the damage step, you can excavate the top card of your deck. If it's a trap, add it to your hand. Otherwise, send it to the graveyard. And once per turn during the end phase, if this card has a trap as Exceed material, you can detach 1 Exceed material from this card, target 1 card on the field, and destroy it. So being another powerhouse, working very, very well with the Paleozoic monsters that we run all together, makes it very, very vital in the deck, having the destruction power, the search power all together, and just a 2400 attack point powerhouse when comboed with your Totally Awesome as well. Excuse me for that, just when you're talking so much, especially the word Paleozoic, definitely a long word to go off of. For the other Paleozoic, I run 1 Paleozoic Obapinia with this one. I may even bump up the numbers to 2 of each of these cards. It needs 2 level 2 monsters. This card's unaffected by other monster effects. You can activate 1 Paleozoic trap card from your hand. If this card has a trap card as Exceed material, you can detach 1 Exceed from this card to add a Paleozoic trap from your deck to your hand. More search power with this card is what I like to go off of, using it for all of your different combo styles in the deck, and being more of the defensive card, while your Anomalocaris is the offensive one with the attack and defense swap for both of these. And then for the Link monsters, I run the 2 Miss Starboy, more Link power setup with all of our different water tribute monsters, being able to boost up their attack, especially our Anomalocaris for the 2900 power boost that this card can have when using your Miss Starboy. And for the rest, I run the 1 Area, the Water Charmer, 1 Marine Zest Coral Anemone, great setup as well with our water monsters. Also 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, the 1 Cross Sheep, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and the 1 Borreload Dragon. When the options do come up, they're great for the resources to rely on. And as for the playstyles to go for in the deck, there's really just the trap setup, as long as you get the 2 level 2 monsters on the field to summon out, and then you know what the playstyle you want to go for destroying your opponent's cards. It's basically just relying on the back row to use against your opponent for those plays. But definitely a very, very fun control deck if you're looking to test it out. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Definitely feels like when we got through those trap cards, it was quickly, a much shorter video than some of the other ones, explaining what they all do, since a lot of them were just generic trap lineup. But once again, that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. Until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And Kira, Twig out.